How are y'all doing tonight?
Great. Great.
Excellent. Glad you all are awake with me and not ready to take an afternoon nap. So I'll formally introduce myself. My name is Mitchell. I am a naturalist intern here at the park, and I'll be our guide here for the next 45 or so minutes. Don't worry, you're in intermediately experienced hands out here, so no big worries here. We'll go from this end of the reservoir over to the other end and back to where we started. It's better than going over there and having you swim back, so anyways. And we'll see what there is to see while we're out here. I'll be able to tell you guys a little bit about the history of the reservoir, as well as some information about any of the wildlife we might be seeing while we're out. I want to talk about what you guys want to listen about, though, so if you have any questions about anything specifically, or something I haven't covered, do feel free to wave your hand around at me and ask. Again, my name is Mitchell, but if you forget that, I'll also probably respond to hey you or hey intern. And if you feel extra polite today, captain sounds pretty good, but I'll leave that one up to you guys. I don't know if I have the experience level for that yet. And do me a favor, while we're gone, double check that your cell phones are on silent or vibrate for me. Just so everyone can hear me nice and clear and so we don't accidentally scare off any of the wildlife. Excuse me right quick.
You take pictures though, right?
Now, sir, would you be willing to be my co-captain tonight? So when we get back, you can see if you can get this rope right back over this last pillar. You think you can hang flat? Yeah, we can do it. So I'm going to put it through here, but when you get it, just hold it out like that. And I'll tell you, it's easier to reach out and try to lasso it, unless you've got rodeo experience, in which case you can give it a try. And what's your name, sir? Paul. Paul, all right, Paul up there will be our co-captain for the evening. So we will see how he does later on. If the boat starts to sink, please refer to Paul instead of Mitchell. And if you had an excellent ride, you can talk about how good Mitchell did and ignore Paul. Oh yeah, I'm sure that line was about to catch fire out here. They had so many people flying. Alright folks, so our first point of interest as we leave the dock will be this structure on our right hand side. This is what we like to call the pavilion at Lily Pad Cove. I'll let you all take a moment and look at that and figure out why we call it the Lily Pad Cove. Alright, time's up. If you're having trouble, bump your neighbor and ask for help. So that particular structure is available for any type of rental you might like to do to host an event here at Bays Mountain. We've had anything this summer from things like wedding ceremonies and receptions to birthday parties, work events, and even concerts. There is electrical wiring out there, as well as a nice fan underneath to keep things nice and cool. That's available all week long, Monday through Thursday. That'll run you $150 for a 4-hour time block, or Friday through Sunday, $250. An additional $75 charge for each additional hour on top of those 4. I'll point out while we're turning around, if you look way back in this cove toward the left-hand shore, near where a couple trees are down with some leaves still on them, we've got a great blue heron right out there hanging out by the water. He's got that whitish head sticking up, looking around. I'll tell you guys a little bit more about him in a moment.
What is that?
But with that pavilion rental, you also get use of a few tables if you'd like them, as well as up to 80 chairs and free admission to the park for your up to 80 guests. I hope not everyone comes off this boat. We'll do my best.
He did great on the zip line.
There you go. It's too slow. The zip line was more fun, wasn't it? I mean, I usually try to keep the barge under 90, but yeah, with this many people on there, I don't think I'm setting any records with that. But anyways, that pavilion is a very scenic spot, very popular spot. I think it's a pretty good deal, but I do work here, so I'm probably a little bit biased. If you've been around the park for a while, you might remember that that area is relatively new. It wasn't always there. That pavilion was constructed in 2017, completed in 2018. But before then, that cove was what we called an aviary. It was home to quite a few different types of birds over there. Mostly types of waterfowl,
in the water.
as it is on water. But that aviary was a little bit accident prone. So the roof of that aviary tended to collect quite a bit of snow and ice over the course of the winter, which started to make it sag down a little bit. And in addition to that, I don't know if they weren't happy with what we were feeding them, but the ducks that used to live there started chomping right through the nest. So they broke out of jail a few times. And we were spending about as much time fixing that aviary as we were actually having it open. So we made the switch to the pavilion once we ran out of birds to take care of. A little more convenient for me because you don't have to feed a pavilion. You just have to feed birds over there. So while we're out today, we'll move through the main channel of the reservoir here to go end to end. But I don't want you all to turn your brains off and take a nap on me. So I've got a question for you all, keep you all awake. And if you would raise your hand for the answer you'd like to choose, there will be two options. And the question is about the origin of this reservoir. So where do you all think this reservoir came from? If you think this reservoir is naturally occurring, raise your hand now for naturally occurring. I can't get one over on you guys. Alright, now raise your hand if you think this reservoir is man-made. Alright, just about everybody. Very good. This reservoir is in fact man-made. But don't get cocky on me yet. What is the giveaway that this reservoir is man-made? Any guesses for me? The dam. Very good. Pretty hard to miss out here if you ask me. Oh, we got a waiver. That's the only kind of wave we ever see out on the water here. So this reservoir was not always here. In fact, at the turn of the 1900s, all of where we are now used to be dry valley. So during that time period, the city of Kingsport was undergoing quite a bit of industrialization. Lots of people started to live near the city center, and as it became more urbanized, that dense population needed to help hang around. So around 1907, the city of Kingsport scouted out Base Mountain here, and noticed that the mountain ridges on either side of us here fall into each other into a nice natural basin. All except for this spot on our left, this low point here, which we call the Dolan Branch Gap. That is where they decided to construct the dam, because that's the only place water would escape down the mountain. So in 1915, they began construction on that dam. They put together a team of about 35 or so men to do so, and they completed it the next year in 1916. From that point on, over the next couple of decades, this served as the water source for the city of Kingsport. But over time, the city realized that even this massive reservoir wouldn't be enough to sustain that ever-growing population. So in 1933, the city began pulling water from the south fork of the Holston River to supplement the water coming out of the reservoir. They continued slowly switching over, and then in 1944, they started pulling all of the water from the south fork of the Holston and stopped using the reservoir altogether as a water source. For the next few decades after that, the park just kind of sat here. The city had begun buying up a lot of the private land on the mountain here, so it was city land, but they didn't really know what to do with it since they weren't using it as a water source anymore. So at the turn of the 70s, the city decided to construct the Nature Center and the exhibit, which was completed in 1971, and from that point on, dedicate this park as a nature preserve. So the depth of the water varies depending on where we're at. The very deepest part of the water would be right in front of the spillway of the dam. Down there, that is the lowest part of the natural valley from which this reservoir is formed. And the rest of it varies depending on where you're at.
Down deep in the water.
It's about 27 feet deep around the spillway. It's about as deep as this barge is long. And there is a trick to finding how deep the water is elsewhere in the reservoir. Don't do too much crying. We're not have alarm. Speaking of, what do you guys think is the water source for the reservoir here? Any guesses for me? No, that's a good guess. Any real guesses for me? Rain, very good. That is the source of water here. In fact, there is no constant water source, no permanent water source leading into the reservoir. That's part of why this was an unsustainable water source back in the day, because they would have to wait on rainfall to fill it back up if they started to drain it. To illustrate that this isn't a great water source for that reason, the water here averages a volume of roughly about 100 million gallons, which sounds like a lot, but the city of Kingsport today, on average, uses anywhere between 15 and 20 million gallons of water per day. So if you run the quick math on that, you realize if we were to use this reservoir as a water source, we would run it dry in less than a week. So I mentioned the water depth. There's a trick to finding the depth of the water, and that would be a certain organism that is all up and down the shore. What am I talking about here?
Lily pads.
Lily pads, very good. So those lily pads, we have two main species. We have these smaller football-shaped lily pads that grow to be about 6 or 7 inches across, those leaves at the top of the water. And those would be the water shield lily pads. They are in bloom right now for the summer. The water shields make a small reddish maroonish bloom. It's only a couple inches tall. It has a pretty slender stalk, and then it ends in one bloom at the top. So keep an eye out along the surface of those lily pads, and you should be able to spot a few of those blooms. The other species we have around here are the much larger heart-shaped lily pads, and those would be the bullhead lily pads. Those grow to be up to about a foot to a foot and a half on those top leaves, full grown. And they are in bloom as well. They make the yellow blooms you might notice as we travel along. They're about the size and shape of a golf ball. They're very spherical. A lot of people wonder if maybe those blooms are supposed to open up a little bit more. They don't do so because that helps them be resistant to any disturbances in the water. If something like a little wave were to come over the edge of the flower and wash it out, the flower would lose all of the nectar and pollen that it spent so much time making. So using those to find the depth, the bullhead lily pads, which again are the larger heart-shaped ones, will grow in water that's up to about 7 or so feet deep. So they're usually closer to shore, whereas the water shields will grow in water that's up to about 11 feet deep. So looking at the two species, you can kind of guesstimate about how deep it is around. Right here on the outer edge of where all these lily pads here are growing, I'd wager it's right about 13, 15 or so feet deep. It's getting too deep for those lily pads to extend much further. So the reason they're limited by water depth is because that's determined by how much sunlight penetrates to the bottom. So when those lily pads are first begin growing on the bottom, they will grow a handful of leaves down there, and those few leaves at the bottom will provide the energy for sending long stems up to the surface. So if not enough light goes all the way to the bottom, they can't photosynthesize, and the lily pads won't make it. Another interesting thing about those lily pads, the water shields in particular, if you look across these clusters, you'll notice they come in a few colors. The lily pads can be green, red, or yellow, generally speaking. And if you had to guess, which would you say are the old lily pads that are dying? What color do you think? Yellow. I heard mumbling. Red. Red. That's a good guess, but it's the opposite of what you'd expect. So we're used to the deciduous trees around here where they turn different colors right before the leaves fall off. The red lily pads are actually the new growth. So they stay red as they grow up through the water. And the reason for that is because of the pigmentation. So their pigments are what help them absorb sunlight to use for photosynthesis. And the pigments they use while they're down in the water reflect red light rather than green light. The chlorophyll, the typical green reflecting pigments are still there, but they get overshadowed by those red reflecting pigments until they reach the top, in which case those green reflecting pigments start to take over and those red reflecting pigments will break down. Some of them look kind of veiny, they have green in the center and red around the edges. They're in the process of adjusting to being on the surface. The yellow leaves are actually the old leaves. They turn yellow as all those pigments start to break down. And those lily pads will drop down to the bottom to serve as fertilizer for the next generation.
I'm looking for fish down in the water. He's looking for fish. Oh, look at all those different colors of lilies.
We'll strap her to the motor and
right over here. See all the different colors? Yellow, greens. All right,
I might have an inner tube somewhere handy. Oh yeah, just eats throat. If you look along the lily pads, you'll notice there's a few little trails here and there among them. Those are usually the small ones, at least right here, usually from our ducks. They will come through and kind of nibble at the lily pads as they go. There's a family of wood ducks that's been hanging around for a few weeks, so keep an eye out for them. And sometimes as they swim through, they'll pick the lily pads to the sides and they nibble at the trail.
Yeah, I saw it like that.
So up here on our right-hand side, right on the shore there, on the corner between the two coves here, we've got this wonderful pile of sticks. Fascinating stuff, I know. So what animal created that pile of sticks?
Beaver.
Beavers, very good. But what is the name of that structure?
Damn.
Not a dam, that's a good guess. That's another structure the beavers make, but that one's a little bit different. What was it? Lodge, very good. So the beaver dams are usually thin walls of sticks and mud that they have built to flood an area. They do so that they can swim rather than walk, and to extend the shoreline so they have more access to trees right along the water's edge. This right here on our right-hand side is a lodge. You'll notice it has a pretty typical dome shape to it. This particular lodge is said to be quite old. It's been around for almost 35 years now. So it has been home to many, many generations of beavers. Oh, we've got those wood ducks, at least one, right out in the cove, swimming along those lily pads. That is who's been leaving all the trails we've seen today.
It's right there. It's swimming right there. It's only one. It's going towards right there. There it is.
So there's 7 total over here.
Right there. Right. And see that big tree over there? He's going towards the. There's a big tree there, and then in between the big tree, there he goes. There he is. He's right there. He's making those wibbly lines. He's right there. He's still moving.
And every year or so,
there he goes. There he goes. See it?
Yeah, but it's probably too far.
Those kits is spelled K-I-T-S. And the parents will raise the first litter for the first year. And then when those kids become 1 year old, they're tasked with being the babysitters for the next year. So once they've been babysitters for a year, and those old newborns, now 1 year olds, are able to take over their position as babysitters, those 1 year olds turn 2 and they're wished a happy birthday, and then thanked for all their hard work around the house by getting kicked right out afterwards. So they move out a little bit from mom and dad. They have to figure out what they're doing out here in the big wide world. And they'll try their hand at building lodges, but they're not really good at picking out prime real estate. They haven't played the market quite so long.
Mom, Daddy.
So they end up building lodges and then sometimes abandoning them shortly afterwards. Which is how we end up with smaller lodges like in front of us on the bank here. And we also have one directly behind us between the trees up on the bank. So we call those the beaver bachelor pads. That's the first spot they move out to when they leave home. Now they might live there for a little while, but usually in the next year or so, they'll move out from those and try to pick a better spot to build a lodge. So they don't live there for consecutive years in a row, which is why those lodges stay very small. As the beavers live somewhere, they're constantly adding on new sticks on top. So if they don't live there very long, the lodges stay pretty small.
How do we get out of here?
Now you'll notice on those lodges there's no clear entrance for those beavers. That's because it's hidden away out of view from us. It's just under the water surface. They have a small tunnel down there that they use to swim in and out. That helps keep predators as well as other freeloaders out of their personal space. So once they go through that tunnel, they land in a main chamber that's kind of like a living room or bedroom. And that is where they will dry off when they get inside as well as groom themselves. They don't want to trap mud through the house. And they will use their front paws that have claws on them to comb their fur. And that helps disperse oil through their fur. That keeps them nice and waterproof.
What do they eat?
Good question. So they might eat some of these bullhead lily pads over here. I'll come back to that in just a second for you. But once you get past that living room chamber, there's a little shelf and then finally a bathroom chamber. I certainly understand having a separation between the two. So they make nice one bed, one bath apartments up here. Although there's no vacancies, so don't get any ideas. So what do they eat? So I've got an example right back here with me of something they might eat. As we all know, they take down trees to use for building materials, but it also serves as their entree as well. So I'll pass this around to you guys so you can all get a close look at it. It's pretty hefty, so be careful with it. Don't knock anybody out for me. And you can send it up the left side and then back to the right side, that way everyone gets a chance to see it. So you'll notice first of all that the ends of that log are whittled down to a nice sharp point. That is the characteristic mark of beaver activity. So beavers are in the rodent family alongside things like mice, rats, squirrels, and chipmunks. And being in the rodent family means that their front teeth will grow for the entirety of their lives. So they have to stay preoccupied, constantly chewing on things to keep whittling those teeth down. If they get too long, it can make it difficult for the beaver to open up its mouth wide enough to get it around another piece of wood. And if they get even longer, they can start to poke into the opposite jaw. As far as I know, there's no beaver dentists out here, so those beavers are in quite a bit of trouble. The reason they have that sharp point on the ends is because the beavers, if the tree is standing upright, they'll turn their heads 90 degrees and chew at it from the side. And as they do so, eventually they get too far into the tree and they can't reach it, so they'll nibble away at the sides of it and slowly cut out a bit of a crescent shape. And then as they cut that crescent shape, when they reach the other side of the tree they're cutting, both sides are left with that curved, sharp point when it finally breaks. So the second thing you'll notice is that there's no bark left on that log, and that is for a good reason as well. The bark is the main source of their food. So they don't like the outer, really dry layer of that bark. They like the inner layer that's nice and moist, because that inner layer serves as the tree's circulatory system, basically. So it pulls water up from the roots and sugars down from the leaves. So for a beaver, that's pretty tasty and nutritious. What was it? Oh, I'm not even sure. Once they strip the bark off of it, it's very difficult to probably get the bark. They're particularly fond of tulip poplars. It's a much softer wood. It's not as dense. So that heartwood in the center there is very dense. So it's hard to tell the difference. They usually shy away from things like oaks because it's a much denser wood. So it's harder for them to cut. Oh yeah, we've got a snapping turtle here on our right-hand side. Right in the lily pads there. Just trying to swim away from us.
I don't see it there.
It went under.
Oh.
It'll probably focus that back up. Keep an eye out. So that was a common snapping turtle down here. Those of you in the front, keep an eye out on the side. You might spot one by the time you leave. If you're having trouble spotting one, we'll let one of you offer your kids up to bait for us. But those will grow up to be quite big. They average about 12 to 15 pounds, and they can be up to about 2 to 2.5 feet, nose to tail. And they're called snapping turtles because obviously they snap at us, but why do you think they might snap at us? Any guesses for me?
Protective reasons.
Protective reasons. Very good. So those snapping turtles are the only type of turtle around here that can't pull their bodies back into their shells. The other two types of turtles, the sliders and box turtles, both can do so. But the snapping turtles have to try to scare away their predators rather than retract into their shell and try to hide and wait it out. Their necks are quite long, much longer than anyone assumes at first glance. They can reach all the way back to the very back of their shell. So while you might think you could sneak up behind the snapping turtle and grab it by the backside, don't expect to come out of that encounter with all of your fingers intact.
Hey, are we moving backwards?
So I mentioned those sliders. Those are the more aquatic turtles we usually see out near the water. They're called sliders because they like to hang out on top of the downed trees and logs in the water to sun themselves. And if a predator approaches or they get too hot, they'll slide right off into the water and swim off their merry way. They have webbed feet to help them swim faster and a much flatter shell to make it more a little aerodynamic. We also have those box turtles I mentioned, although they are more terrestrial. They like to hang out in the floor of the forest, rummaging around all of the leaf litter down there, looking for something to eat there. All of the turtles are omnivores. They will eat whatever they have an opportunity to, really. The ones that live in the water will eat things like small fish. They'll munch on the lily pads, the different water grasses that grow out here, even some small water insects given a chance. While the terrestrial species will rummage around for things like worms and grubs and beetles around decaying logs, even things like fruit and berries and roots that they might be able to find along the ground or dig up. Alright, go fish the boat. Touch them very much.
It's putty. It's like slime.
Alright, can you say that, Dad? That would be awesome.
Bring it back over to this lady. It's her. This young lady, it's her.
So I'll go back to talking about that great blue heron while we got a moment that we saw as we left. I was hoping we might see another one so you guys could get a little closer look at her. But those are one of the types of waterfowl we have out here. They are what we call wading birds because they will use those long, skinny legs to wade out into the water and look for something to eat. Oh! Speaking of the devil, we've got one on our right-hand side up on the shore there. That's convenient timing for me. He's poking up right over the grass right there. He's probably about knee deep in the water there. He's got that curved neck poking up.
Oh yeah, down there. It's over there. You see it over there?
You can see over the dash. You see it there? And right there behind that log down right there.
You see there's a log down?
Seeing the big old bird.
Look up here.
There's
a log. There's a log and look at my hair. Do you see him?
See that log that's down right
see
here
him?
beside us? Just right above that log.
Okay, you stand up.
So they are called the great blue heron because, as you can tell, they are quite large for birds around here. They can grow up to be about 4 feet tall with a wingspan of up to 6 feet across. So they're very impressive, especially when they're
There he goes. He just opened his mouth. He's looking this way.
Now he's walking around. Not making too much noise for his comfort. I'm messing up his fishing trip. They're called the great blue heron because if he were to take off, on the bottom of their wings they have a beautiful row of navy blue feathers. So he's probably out there trying to find some dinner right now. You can see he was sitting very, very still. They'll usually do that whenever they spot a prey item they might want to catch. Those are very opportunistic as well, and they'll catch whatever they can. Usually their diet consists of things like fish, frogs and toads, salamanders, lizards, and even snakes given the opportunity. What they will do if they notice prey nearby is sit very still and scrunch their neck up nice and tight in an S shape. And when that prey gets a little too close, they'll extend that neck out to the blink of an eye and skewer that prey with their beak. It's as sharp as a knife at the very tip of it. Once they skewer that prey, they'll usually pull it up to shore to eat up there, just so if they drop it, it doesn't disappear back into the water. They have to swallow their prey whole. They don't chew it or pull it into pieces or anything like that. They let their internal gizzards do the work. That's the little pocket of rocks they'll pick up. That'll kind of grind up their food after eating. So they have to be careful about the size of prey they catch. If they grab a fish that's a little too big, they can choke on it and have to spit it right back up. So those are able to hang around anywhere there's liquid water for them to hunt in, so they're around here year round. It takes quite a lot for the reservoir to start to freeze over, and even if it does, they can usually just migrate out to the Holston River for a few weeks while this thaws back out. As long as there's water, there's prey for them to catch. But if all the water around freezes, they can migrate down south and take a nice beach vacation for the winter. They'll go to the southern coast of the U.S. or Central America and even the upper tip of South America. When they get back, begins their breeding season in the early spring. The males start to try to show off for the females, nothing special. They'll turn bright yellow on their necks and legs and a brighter blue on their wings. And if they manage to attract a mate, they'll have a clutch of eggs, usually on average about 5 eggs. And they'll build a nest out of whatever materials are available. Around here, they probably use lots of sticks and twigs. Somewhere like grass and marshland, they might just stomp out a nice little bowl and some grass. The male and female take turns incubating the eggs. The female does most of the work. No surprise there. The male will sit on them for about 7 or so hours a day while the female takes the rest of the day. And when they're not sitting on the eggs is when they have to go hunting. They have to eat quite a lot because once those chicks hatch, the parents are responsible for feeding them by regurgitating into their mouth.